The silver ships appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. They were massive, each one the size of a small city, and they hung in the sky like impossible dreams made real. The people of Earth stopped and stared. Some were afraid. Others were excited. All of them knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council. They had been watching Earth for over 50 years, studying humanity from a safe distance. Now they had decided that humans were ready to join the greater community of intelligent species. They sent down diplomats in smaller ships that landed in major cities across the planet. The diplomats were strange creatures. Some had forearms, others had scales or fur. One species looked like floating jellyfish that spoke through electronic devices. The lead diplomat was named Vexthor. He belonged to a species called the Zenthari, tall beings with blue skin and large eyes that seemed to see everything. Vexthor met with Earth's leaders in a special conference held in Geneva. He explained that the galaxy was vast and full of life. Thousands of species existed across millions of worlds. The Council kept peace among them all. "We invite humanity to join us," Vexthor said through his translator device. "You will have protection, trade, and friendship with countless worlds. All we ask is that you follow our laws and contribute to the common defense." The Earth leaders looked at each other. They had many questions, but the most important one came from General Sarah Martinez of the United States Marine Corps. "What do you mean by common defense?" she asked. Vexthor made a gesture that the translator interpreted as a smile. "Pirates and raiders exist even in space. Sometimes disputes arise between worlds. The Council maintains peacekeeping forces. Each member species contributes what they can. For a new species like yours, we expect very little, perhaps a few hundred soldiers to serve alongside our forces. Think of it as a learning experience." The humans agreed. Within 6 months, Earth became the newest member of the Galactic Council. It was exciting. Human scientists studied alien technology. Human traders began selling Earth goods to alien markets, and human soldiers prepared to serve alongside alien warriors. The first human military unit assigned to Council service was Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. 200 men and women, all volunteers, traveled to a Council military base on a planet called Sanctuary Prime. The base commander was a Hivrak named Chiton 7, a creature that looked like a large insect standing on its back legs. Chiton 7 examined the humans with his compound eyes. They looked soft to him. Their skin had no armor. They had only 2 arms and 2 legs. They carried weapons that seemed crude compared to plasma rifles and energy shields. The commander felt disappointed. How could such fragile creatures help defend the Council? "Welcome to Sanctuary Prime," Chiton 7 said. "You will train with our forces and learn proper combat doctrine. Perhaps in a few years, you will be ready for actual service." Lieutenant Jake Morrison, the human company commander, simply nodded. "Yes, sir. We're ready to learn." The first few weeks passed quietly. The humans trained hard. They learned to use alien equipment and studied alien tactics. The other soldiers at the base watched them with curiosity. Some aliens made friends with the humans. Others kept their distance. Everyone assumed the humans would be average soldiers at best. After all, Earth was a peaceful garden world with light gravity and a comfortable climate. How tough could its warriors be? Then the pirates attacked. It happened during a routine convoy mission. 3 transport ships were carrying supplies from Sanctuary Prime to a mining colony at the edge of Council space. Bravo Company was providing security, along with a company of Zenthari soldiers and some Hivrak warriors. The transports were slow and undefended, perfect targets. The pirate ships came out of nowhere, dropping from faster-than-light travel right on top of the convoy. There were 5 of them, fast attack craft covered in weapons. They belonged to the Kresh, a species of raiders who refused to join the Council and made their living by stealing and killing. "All units, battle stations," the convoy commander shouted over the communication system. "Prepare to repel boarders." The Kresh ships opened fire. Energy weapons stabbed through space, hitting the transport's shields. Alarms blared. The Zenthari soldiers rushed to defensive positions, setting up barriers and checking their plasma rifles. The Hivrak warriors took cover near the airlocks, ready to fight if the pirates boarded. The human Marines moved differently. They didn't rush. They walked calmly to their positions, checking weapons and ammunition with practiced efficiency. They had fought before, back on Earth, in places with names like Fallujah and Helmand and Marawi. This was just another day at work. Lock and load, Lieutenant Morrison said quietly. Standard boarding defense. No one gets past us. The Kresh pirates blasted through the transport's airlock. The metal door exploded inward and aliens in crude armor poured through, firing weapons wildly. They expected easy prey. They got the exact opposite. The Marines opened fire. Their rifles made a distinctive sound, a rapid crack 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 that echoed through the corridors. Bullets tore through the pirates. The Kresh hadn't expected such aggressive resistance. They tried to form up to push forward, but the humans gave them no chance. The Marines moved in pairs, covering each other, advancing step by step. Contact front, Sergeant Maria Rodriguez shouted. Engaging! Grenade out! Corporal Thomas Chen pulled the pin and threw. The explosive device bounced perfectly through the doorway and detonated among the pirates. The blast was devastating. The alien soldiers watched in shock. The humans were fighting like apex predators. They showed no fear. They didn't take cover and wait for orders. They attacked, pressing forward into the enemy, getting close enough to see the whites of their enemy's eyes. One Marine even drew a knife and stabbed a pirate who got too close. The fight lasted 8 minutes. When it ended, 17 dead pirates lay scattered across the floor. The humans had suffered 2 wounded and 0 dead. They immediately began treating casualties, both their own and the aliens. They secured the area, checked for additional threats, and reported mission success. The Zenthari commander watched the security footage 3 times. He couldn't believe what he saw. The humans had charged toward the enemy. They fought in conditions that would panic his best soldiers. They used explosives in close quarters without hesitation. They seemed completely comfortable with violence. How? He asked Lieutenant Morrison. How are your soldiers so effective? You're from a peaceful world. Morrison looked at him with tired eyes. Sir, with respect, Earth isn't peaceful. We've been fighting wars for our entire history. Every Marine here has seen combat. This wasn't our first fight. It probably won't be our last. The commander checked Earth's military history. What he found horrified him. Humanity had fought thousands of wars. Millions of battles. Death counts in the hundreds of millions. Wars that lasted years or even decades. Humans had been killing each other with increasingly effective weapons for 10,000 years. They had refined warfare into a science. The Galactic Council had made a terrible miscalculation. They thought they were inviting a peaceful species to join them. Instead, they had invited a planet full of warriors who considered combat as natural as breathing. News of the pirate attack spread quickly. Other species began watching the humans carefully. The soft-looking creatures from the garden world fought like demons. They didn't just defend, they attacked. They took risks that would terrify any sane being, and they did it all with calm professionalism, as if fighting and dying was just part of the job. Vexthor sent a message back to the Council homeworld. We may have made an error in judgment, he wrote. The humans are not what we expected. Their standard infantry fights like our elite shock troops. They are aggressive, tough, and extremely dangerous. I recommend we reconsider their role in Council military operations. But it was too late. Humanity was already part of the Council, and the galaxy was about to learn what Deathworlders could really do. The Krell Empire had been a problem for decades. They were a warrior species, aggressive and proud, who believed that strength gave them the right to take whatever they wanted. For years, the Galactic Council had maintained an uneasy peace with them through diplomacy and shows of force. But the Krell had been growing bolder. They had been building ships and weapons. Everyone knew that war was coming. They just didn't know when. The attack came without warning. Krell warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and struck 3 Council border worlds simultaneously. They bombed cities from orbit. They landed armies and began taking territory. The Council worlds had minimal defenses. Thousands died in the first hour. Millions more were trapped as the Krell surrounded population centers. The Galactic Council responded immediately. They called up their military forces and began organizing a counterattack. Ships from a dozen species converged on the border. Ground forces prepared to deploy, and for the first time, human military units would fight in a major galactic war. The United States Army sent the 3rd Infantry Division. The British sent a brigade of their best troops. Russia contributed mechanized units. China sent infantry and artillery. In total, 20,000 human soldiers deployed to the war zone, a tiny fraction of the Council's military might. The alien commanders didn't expect much from them. They had seen the Marines fight pirates, yes, but that was a small skirmish. Real war was different. General Sarah Martinez commanded the human forces. She was a veteran of 3 wars on Earth, a tough woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She met with the Council's Supreme Commander, a Hyverak named Chiton Prime, in the war room of the flagship. General Martinez, Chiton Prime said, "Your forces will be held in reserve. We appreciate Earth's contribution, but this will be a difficult fight. We cannot risk our newest members in the heaviest combat." Martinez smiled slightly. "Sir, with respect, my soldiers didn't travel across the galaxy to sit in reserve. We're ready to fight." "I'm sure you believe that," Chiton Prime replied. "But the Krell are not pirates. They are a military power. This will be brutal." "Then we'll fit right in," Martinez said. The Council forces landed on the planet Kepler-7, one of the 3 worlds under attack. The Krell had taken the northern continent and were pushing south toward the main population centers. Council forces established a defensive line across a river valley. The plan was simple: hold the line while reinforcements arrived, then push the Krell back. The human forces took up position on the eastern end of the line. They dug trenches and fighting positions. They set up artillery batteries on the hills behind them. They placed machine guns to cover the approaches. The alien soldiers watched them work. The humans moved with purpose, every action efficient and practiced. They transformed the terrain into a killing ground in just 2 days. The Krell attack came at dawn on the 3rd day. Artillery fire announced their arrival, shells screaming through the air and exploding across the defensive line. Then came the ground forces, thousands of Krell warriors in powered armor advancing in massive formations. They looked like demons, 8 feet tall with 4 arms and thick armor plating. They carried heavy weapons and roared their war cries as they charged. The Council forces opened fire. Plasma weapons and energy beams cut through the Krell ranks. Explosions threw bodies into the air. But the Krell kept coming. They were used to taking casualties. Their culture glorified death in battle. For every one that fell, 2 more stepped forward. The alien section of the line began to buckle. The sheer weight of the Krell assault was overwhelming. Units fell back trying to maintain cohesion. Casualties mounted. The Council commander began preparing to order a general retreat. Then the humans opened fire. The sound was like nothing the aliens had ever heard. Hundreds of machine guns firing at once mixed with the deeper boom of artillery. The humans had waited until the Krell were in optimal range. Now they unleashed hell. Bullets tore through the Krell formations. Artillery shells landed with precision, guided by forward observers who called in fire with calm voices despite the chaos around them. Fire mission. "Coordinates marked," Lieutenant David Park spoke into his radio. 400 meters, infantry in the open. Fire for effect. Seconds later, explosions obliterated an entire Krell company. The survivors tried to reorganize, but the human machine guns cut them down. The advance stalled. The Krell commander couldn't understand what was happening. His warriors were dying by the hundreds. The human section of the line wasn't falling back. It wasn't even wavering. The humans just kept firing, reload after reload, steady as machines. The Krell tried to flank the position. They sent armored vehicles around the side, hoping to break through where the defenses were weaker. The humans were ready. Anti-tank missiles streaked from hidden positions. Vehicles exploded, burned, died. Engineers detonated mines that tore through infantry formations. Snipers picked off officers and heavy weapon operators. For 6 hours, the battle raged. The Krell threw everything they had at the human positions. They used chemical weapons. The humans put on gas masks and kept fighting. They used electronic warfare to jam communications. The humans switched to backup systems and hand signals. They even managed to break through one section of trench. The humans counterattacked with bayonets and grenades, fighting hand-to-hand until they drove the Krell back out. By noon, the Krell assault had broken. They retreated, leaving thousands of dead behind. The human section of the line had held. Not just held, but inflicted catastrophic casualties on the enemy. The aliens who had fought beside them were shocked. General Martinez walked the trench line, checking on her soldiers. They were tired, dirty, and some were wounded, but they were still ready to fight. She found Sergeant Rodriguez reloading magazines. "How are you holding up, Sergeant?" Martinez asked. "Ready for round 2, ma'am," Rodriguez replied. "Those Krell hit hard, but they don't maneuver worth a damn. They just charge straight ahead." "Makes them easy targets," Martinez nodded. She had seen it too. The Krell were brave and strong, but they had poor tactics. They relied on intimidation and brute force. Against an enemy that didn't break, that didn't panic, they struggled. The battle for Kepler-7 lasted 72 hours. The Krell kept attacking, wave after wave, trying to break through. The Council line held, but it was mostly because the humans anchored the defense. Whenever a section of line looked like it might break, human units moved to reinforce it. They fought in shifts, rotating fresh troops forward while exhausted ones rested and rearmed. The alien soldiers began to understand something profound. The humans didn't fight like normal beings. They could stay awake for days on minimal sleep. They could fight while wounded, ignoring injuries that would incapacitate any other species. They could eat cold rations and drink contaminated water without complaint. They were like machines that ran on willpower and violence. On the fourth day, Council reinforcements arrived. Fresh divisions landed and prepared to counterattack. The plan was to push the Krell off the planet entirely. General Martinez requested that human forces lead the assault. Chiton Prime hesitated, then agreed. He had learned to trust the humans. The counterattack began at dawn. Human armor rolled forward, tanks and infantry fighting vehicles working together. Artillery prepared the battlefield, destroying Krell positions. Attack helicopters swept overhead, hunting targets. And the infantry advanced behind it all, moving in coordinated formations that the Krell couldn't match. The Krell tried to stand and fight. They died in their positions. They tried to retreat in order. Human artillery caught them on the move and slaughtered them. Within 12 hours, the Krell northern stronghold had fallen. Within 24 hours, Krell forces on the entire planet were surrendering or fleeing to orbit. The Battle of Kepler-7 was over. The Council had won, thanks in large part to human forces. The casualty reports shocked everyone. Human units had suffered 30% casualties, numbers that would have destroyed any alien force. Yet they had maintained combat effectiveness throughout. They had never broken, never panicked, never stopped fighting. The other two planets were liberated within a week. Human forces fought on both of them, and in both cases they exceeded all expectations. The Krell Empire sued for peace after losing 50,000 soldiers and gaining nothing. The war was over. Chiton Prime called General Martinez to his flagship. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I underestimated your species. Your soldiers are extraordinary. They fight like our elite shock troops, but you tell me these are just regular infantry." "Yes, sir," Martinez replied. "These are standard Army and Marine units. Nothing special?" "Nothing special," Chiton Prime repeated slowly. He had reviewed the combat footage. The humans had done things he had never seen before. They charged into enemy fire. They fought at close range with blades and bare hands. They refused to surrender even when surrounded and outnumbered. If these were regular troops, what were human elite forces like? He decided he didn't want to know. The Galactic Council awarded the humans medals and honors. They threw parades and gave speeches about human courage. But behind closed doors, Council military analysts were writing very different reports. Humanity, they concluded, was the most dangerous military power in known space. Their standard infantry outperformed every other. The Krell Empire was in chaos. They had lost the war against the Council, lost territory, lost ships, and lost face. But they still had their pride, and they were planning revenge. 3 Krell warlords led the effort. War Chief Grath ruled the military forces. High Commander Vec controlled the intelligence networks. And Supreme Leader Thros commanded everything from his fortress world deep in Krell space. These 3 leaders were the most protected individuals in the Empire. Grath lived on a military base surrounded by 10,000 elite warriors. Vec stayed in an underground bunker that could survive nuclear strikes. Thros never left his fortress, a massive complex with shields, sensors, and automated defenses that could detect a fly from orbit. They were untouchable, or so they believed. On a Tuesday morning, all 3 died. Grath was found in his private quarters with his throat cut. His guards had heard nothing. Security cameras showed no one entering or leaving. One moment he was alive, reviewing battle plans. The next moment he was dead, bleeding out on his desk. The guards who found him were executed for failing in their duty, but they died swearing they had been at their posts all night. No one had passed them. No one could have. Vec died even more mysteriously. He was in his bunker, 300 meters underground, behind blast doors that required 3 separate codes to open. His bodyguards were outside. He was alone in his command center, coordinating intelligence operations. Then his communication screen went dark. When his guards finally cut through the door, they found him dead at his console, A single bullet hole in his head. No weapon in the room. No way for anyone to get in or out. Thros was the most protected of all, yet he died the same day as the others. His fortress had every defense imaginable. Energy shields, motion sensors, thermal imaging, guard patrols every 100 meters. He stayed in the central tower, surrounded by layers of security. Yet somehow someone got to him. He was found in his throne room, dead from a knife wound to the heart. The knife was human-made, a simple combat blade. It had been left in the body like a signature. The Krell Empire erupted in panic and confusion. Who had done this? How had they done it? The deaths were impossible, yet they had happened. New leaders emerged, but they were terrified. They increased their security. They trusted no one, and they started hearing stories. Krell soldiers began reporting strange things. Guards on night watch would hear footsteps but see nothing. Sentries would vanish from their posts only to be found hours later with no memory of what happened. Security cameras would glitch for a few seconds, and when they came back online, officers would be dead. Doors would open by themselves. Shadows would move when nothing was there. The Krell started calling them ghosts. Human ghosts that walked through walls and killed without mercy. Stories spread through the military. Soldiers became afraid of the dark. They refused to stand guard alone. Some deserted their posts entirely, preferring punishment to facing the invisible killers. On a mining station at the edge of Krell space, the entire command staff died in a single night. 15 officers, all killed in different ways. Some shot, some stabbed. One looked like he had been strangled. The station's 600 workers found them in the morning. There had been no alarms, no signs of forced entry. The security system showed nothing unusual. The humans had been there, done their work, and vanished like smoke. The Galactic Council was confused. They knew the Krell leaders were dead, but they didn't know how or who had killed them. Council intelligence agencies investigated. They examined the crime scenes. They interviewed witnesses. They reviewed every piece of data they could find. They discovered nothing. It was as if the killers didn't exist. Vexthor, the Zenthari diplomat, requested a meeting with General Martinez. They met in a secure conference room on a council space station. Vexthor got straight to the point. "General, we need to know the truth. Did humans kill the Krell leaders?" Martinez looked at him calmly. "I can neither confirm nor deny any special operations conducted by human forces." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you're going to get," Martinez replied. "What I can tell you is that the Krell were planning another attack. They were building a new fleet. They were recruiting warriors from other aggressive species. They were going to cause a lot of death and suffering. Now they're not." Vexthor sat back in his chair. His large eyes studied the human general. "These ghosts the Krell fear, they're real, aren't they? You have soldiers who can do the impossible." Martinez smiled slightly. "Every military has special operations forces, Vexthor. Surely the Council has elite units." "We do," Vexthor admitted. "But our elite forces are for direct action. Assaults on fortified positions, difficult combat missions. They don't infiltrate enemy headquarters and assassinate leaders without leaving evidence." "Maybe that's because you're not trying hard enough," Martinez said. "Or maybe it's because humans have spent thousands of years perfecting the art of unconventional warfare. We've had commandos and assassins and spies since before we had writing. It's part of who we are." The meeting ended without any real answers, but Vexthor reported back to the Council what he had learned. Humans had military units beyond their regular forces. Units that operated in the shadows. Units that could do things that seemed impossible. The Council needed to know more. They started researching human military history more carefully. What they found disturbed them. Humans had entire branches of their military dedicated to special operations. Units with names like Navy SEALs, Delta Force, British SAS, Russian Spetsnaz, Israeli Sayeret Matkal. Each one trained for years to do jobs that regular soldiers couldn't do. They operated behind enemy lines. They rescued hostages. They gathered intelligence. They assassinated high-value targets, and they did it all while remaining invisible. The Council analysts read accounts of human special operations missions. They read about 6 men holding off an army of hundreds in the mountains of Afghanistan. They read about operators swimming for hours in freezing water to plant explosives on enemy ships. They read about raids so precise that targets were eliminated without waking their families sleeping in the next room. They read about missions in deserts, jungles, Arctic wastelands, and urban war zones. One analyst named Kriva presented his findings to the Council Security Committee. He was a cautious being, careful with his words, but even he seemed shaken. The humans have industrialized special warfare, Kriva said. They don't have a few dozen elite warriors like most species. They have thousands, tens of thousands, each one trained to a level that exceeds our best operatives. And they have different units for different missions. Some specialize in water operations, some in mountain warfare, some in hostage rescue, some in direct action raids, some in reconnaissance, some in assassination. How is that possible? One council member asked. Training such warriors must take decades. It takes years, not decades, Kriva replied. But humans start young. They have selection processes that eliminate 90% of candidates. Only the strongest, smartest, and most mentally resilient make it through. Then they train these survivors in every skill imaginable: weapons, hand-to-hand combat, languages, survival, medicine, engineering. They create warriors who can adapt to any situation. Another council member spoke up. But surely these are rare individuals. They can't have many. Kriva pulled up statistics. The United States alone has over 70,000 special operations personnel. That's just one human nation. Britain, Russia, China, France, Israel, and dozens of other countries have their own units. In total, humans probably have over 200,000 special operations soldiers. For comparison, the entire council has approximately 15,000 beings in elite units across all member species. The room fell silent. The numbers were staggering. Humanity had created armies of ghosts, warriors who specialized in the impossible, and they had used them against the Krell with devastating effect. What do we do with this information? The committee chairman asked. We acknowledge the truth, Vexthor said. He had been sitting quietly in the corner, listening. When we invited humans to join the council, we thought their regular military was impressive. We were wrong. Their regular military is just the beginning. Their special operations forces are something else entirely. They're what happens when a warrior species from a death world decides to create the ultimate soldiers. The council members looked at each other with a mixture of fear and respect. They had seen human regular forces in action during the Krell War. Those forces had been terrifying enough. But now they knew the truth. Humans had warriors who made their regular soldiers look gentle. One thing was certain. No one in the galaxy wanted to be on the receiving end of a human special operations mission. The Krell had learned that lesson. The bodies of their leaders were proof enough. Back on Earth, in a classified military base, a group of tired men and women were being debriefed after their missions in Krell space. They had infiltrated the most secure locations in the EMP. The Galactic Council Security Committee had a problem. They knew humans had special operations forces. They knew these forces were effective. But they didn't understand how effective, and that uncertainty made them nervous. They needed information. They needed to see what human operators could actually do. Vexthor proposed a solution. Request a demonstration, he suggested. Ask the humans to show us their capabilities in controlled exercises. We'll provide scenarios, and they'll show us how they would handle them. Then we'll have our elite forces attempt the same scenarios. This way, we can measure the difference objectively. The council agreed. General Martinez received the request and smiled when she read it. They want a demonstration? She said to her staff. Let's give them one they'll never forget. 3 weeks later, the demonstration began on a council training facility on the planet Demos 4. The facility had everything needed for realistic combat training. Urban areas for close quarters battle. Wilderness for survival training. Mountains, deserts, and forests. Mock-up buildings and vehicles. Sensor systems to track every movement. It was perfect. The council had invited observers from 30 different species. Military commanders, intelligence officers, and government officials all came to watch. They wanted to see if humans were really as good as the rumors suggested. The council also brought their best warriors, a company of Zenthari elite guards, a platoon of Hyvrek shock troops, a squad of core assassins, beings who had trained their entire lives for combat. These were the finest warriors the galaxy had to offer. The humans arrived in simple transport ships. 12 operators stepped off carrying basic gear. They wore plain uniforms with no insignia. They carried rifles, pistols, and knives. They looked completely ordinary. The alien observers were disappointed. These didn't look like elite warriors. They looked like regular soldiers. Colonel James Harper commanded the human team. He was a SEAL with 20 years of experience, a quiet man with steady eyes and the confident bearing of someone who had seen everything and survived it all. He met with the demonstration coordinators. "We've prepared 3 scenarios," the chief coordinator explained. "Scenario 1 is a hostage rescue. Scenario 2 is asymmetric warfare. Scenario 3 is deep reconnaissance. We'll run your team through them, then we'll run our elite forces through the same scenarios. This will give us an objective comparison." "Understood," Harper said. "When do we start?" "Immediately." The first scenario was a hostage rescue. The situation was simple but difficult. 20 hostages were being held in a 3-story building in the urban training area. The building had 40 guards armed with weapons and body armor. The guards were actually training androids with realistic movement and threat assessment capabilities. The hostages were biological beings, volunteers who had agreed to participate. The mission was to rescue all hostages without casualties. The alien observers settled into the command center to watch. Multiple cameras covered every angle. Sensors tracked heat signatures and movement. Computer systems measured time, ammunition used, and casualties inflicted. Everything would be recorded and analyzed. Colonel Harper and his team studied the building from a distance. They had maps and sensor data, but they spent an hour watching the structure, noting patrol patterns and entry points. Then they made their plan. The assault began at night. The observers watched their screens as the 12 operators approached the building. They moved like shadows, utterly silent. 6 operators scaled the outer wall using climbing equipment. The other 6 prepared to breach the front door. Everything happened simultaneously. The breach was explosive, literally. The front door vanished in a controlled detonation. Flashbang grenades flew through the opening, brilliant bursts of light and sound that would have stunned any real guards. The operators poured through, weapons up, moving with fluid precision. Each one seemed to know exactly where to go, what to do, without needing to communicate. The operators on the roof came through windows and skylights. They moved through the building like water flowing downhill, fast and unstoppable. Every guard they encountered was neutralized with 2 shots, perfect center mass hits. They didn't waste ammunition. They didn't hesitate. They just moved and shot, clearing room after room. The hostages were located on the 2nd floor. 4 operators secured them while the rest continued clearing threats. The entire building was swept in 6 minutes. All 40 guards were neutralized. All 20 hostages were safe. 0 casualties. The operators had used exactly 94 rounds of ammunition. The alien observers sat in stunned silence. They rewound the footage and watched it again. The precision was inhuman. Every movement had purpose. Every shot hit its target. The operators had worked together like parts of a single organism, each one knowing what the others would do without needing to speak. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. That was acceptable, the chief coordinator said weakly. Now let's see our forces attempt the scenario. The Zenthari elite guards went next. They were professionals, well-trained and experienced. They planned their assault carefully and executed it properly. They breached the building, cleared rooms methodically, and rescued the hostages. It took them 43 minutes. They suffered 2 simulated casualties from guard fire. They used over 600 rounds of ammunition. Still, by any normal standard, it was a successful mission, but compared to the humans, it looked slow and clumsy. The difference was obvious to everyone watching. The second scenario was asymmetric warfare. A 12-person human team was placed in rough terrain, a mix of forest and hills. They were given basic supplies and weapons. Their mission was to hold off and harass a full battalion of enemy forces, 600 soldiers with armored vehicles and air support, for 72 hours. The enemy's mission was to advance through the territory and capture an objective on the far side. This scenario would test survival skills, tactical thinking, and the ability to fight outnumbered. The alien observers expected the human team to do well initially, but eventually be overwhelmed. 12 against 600 was impossible odds even for skilled soldiers. Colonel Harper and his team disappeared into the wilderness. The enemy battalion began their advance, confident and organized. They moved in standard formation, vehicles on the roads, infantry screening the flanks, air units overhead. They expected to reach their objective within a day. The first attack came after 2 hours. A roadside bomb destroyed the lead vehicle. Sniper fire killed 3 officers. Then silence. The battalion stopped and tried to locate the attackers. They found nothing. No heat signatures. No movement. The humans had struck and vanished like ghosts. The attacks continued for 3 days. Every time the battalion tried to advance, something happened. Mines destroyed vehicles. Snipers picked off key personnel. Night raids hit command posts. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. They attacked, withdrew, and attacked again from a different direction. The battalion became paranoid and exhausted. They spread their forces thin, trying to cover every approach. They wasted ammunition shooting at shadows. By the end of 72 hours, the battalion had barely advanced halfway to their objective. They had lost 23 vehicles and taken over 100 casualties, all simulated but very realistic. Morale was shattered. The commander requested permission to withdraw, and the human team emerged from the wilderness looking tired but unharmed. They had used less than 500 rounds total. They had moved over 100 kilometers through rough terrain. They had eaten, slept, and fought while being constantly hunted. And they had won. The HFY shock troops attempted the scenario next. They fought bravely and inflicted some casualties, but they were found and eliminated within 18 hours. They couldn't match the human ability to remain hidden and mobile while constantly striking the enemy. It was a different kind of warfare, one that required patience, discipline, and skills that most soldiers didn't possess. The third scenario was deep reconnaissance. A 2-person team would infiltrate hostile territory, observe an enemy base, gather intelligence, and exfiltrate without being detected. The base had over 300 guards, sensor systems, patrol drones, and automated defenses. It covered 10 square kilometers. The team would have to remain undetected for 1 week, while gathering detailed information about the base layout, troop movements, and defensive capabilities. 2 human operators volunteered, Lieutenant Sarah Chen and Sergeant Marcus Webb. They were rangers, specialists in reconnaissance. They studied maps of the area and equipment manifests. Then they simply walked into the wilderness and vanished. For 7 days, the alien observers watched the sensor feeds. They saw nothing. The guards at the base went about their routines normally. Patrols walked their routes. Drones flew their patterns. Nothing seemed unusual. The observers began to think the humans had failed, that they hadn't been able to get close to the base. On the 8th day, Chen and Webb walked out of the wilderness and submitted their report. It was 40 pages long and included detailed drawings of the base layout, schedules of guard shifts, locations of every sensor and weapon system, and photographs of key buildings. They had been inside the wire. They had moved through the base freely. They had observed everything they needed. And no one had known they were there. The Observer's Review. The warning came from a deep space observation station on the edge of Council territory. The sensors had detected something moving through space, something massive. At first, the operators thought it was a glitch. Then they realized it was real. Ships were coming. Thousands of them moving in a coordinated swarm. Behind the ships came something worse. Vast biological constructs that looked like asteroids but moved with purpose. The Vrel swarm had arrived. The Vrel were not a species anyone wanted to meet. They were a hive mind. Billions of individual creatures controlled by a single consciousness spread across multiple queen nodes. They had consumed entire sectors of the galaxy, turning planets into breeding grounds and using the biomass to create more Vrel. They didn't negotiate. They didn't retreat. They simply expanded like a cancer growing across the stars. The Council had thought the Vrel were far away, contained by natural barriers and other species' territories. They had been wrong. The swarm had found a way through, and now they were coming for Council space. The first wave hit 3 outer colonies. Within days, those worlds were silent. No survivors, no communications, just silence. The Galactic Council mobilized every ship and soldier they had. They established defensive lines. They evacuated civilians from border worlds. They prepared for the fight of their lives. Humanity sent its fleets and armies. The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Vrel didn't fight like normal enemies. They attacked in endless waves. Every soldier killed was replaced by 10 more. They adapted to weapons and tactics in real time, their hive mind learning from every encounter. They used biological weapons, diseases engineered to kill specific species. They deployed creatures designed for different tasks, some for direct combat, others for infiltration, others for destroying infrastructure. For 3 months, the Council fought and died. They won battles but lost the war. The Vrel kept coming. Every planet they took gave them more resources to make more Vrel. The casualties were staggering. Entire fleets were destroyed. Worlds were overrun. Millions died. The Council began preparations to evacuate their core worlds and retreat to fortified systems. They were losing, and everyone knew it. General Martinez attended the War Council meeting via hologram. She had been fighting the Vrel on multiple fronts, and she looked exhausted. Her uniform was dirty and her face had new scars, but her eyes were still sharp. "We need a new strategy," Titan Prime said. He commanded the Council forces, and even his mechanical voice sounded tired. "Conventional warfare isn't working. The Vrel adapt too quickly. We kill millions and they replace them in days. We're losing. We need to attack their command structure," Vexthor suggested. "The Queen nodes control everything. If we can destroy them, the swarm will fragment." "We've tried," a Zenthari admiral replied. "The Queen nodes are protected by millions of Vrel. They're on heavily fortified worlds or inside mobile hive ships. We can't get close enough to strike them." Martinez leaned forward. "What if we don't try to fight through the swarm? What if we go around it?" Everyone turned to look at her hologram. "Explain," Chitin Prime said. "Special operations," Martinez replied. "Small teams inserted deep behind Vrel lines. They locate the Queen nodes and destroy them. Surgical strikes instead of frontal assaults." The Council members looked skeptical. "General, the Vrel territory extends across dozens of star systems. The Queen nodes could be anywhere, and the environments there are hostile. Toxic atmospheres, extreme radiation, biological hazards. No one could survive long enough to complete such missions. Human Special Operations Forces can," Martinez said quietly. "That's what they're trained for. Impossible missions in hostile environments. We've been doing it for thousands of years." There was silence. Finally, Vexthor spoke. "Are you volunteering your operators for this?" "Yes," Martinez said. "Give me access to your intelligence. Tell me everything you know about the Vrel command structure. I'll organize the missions." The Council agreed. They had no other options. Within a week, Human Special Operations Command had analyzed all available intelligence. They identified 47 Queen nodes across 12 star systems. Each one controlled a sector of the swarm. Destroying them all would fragment the Vrel into manageable pieces. But the missions would be suicide runs by any normal calculation. Colonel Harper called his operators together. There were 600 of them, gathered from SEAL teams, Delta Force, British SAS, Russian Spetsnaz, and a dozen other units. These were the best of the best men and women who had proven themselves in countless missions. Harper explained the situation honestly. "This is going to be the hardest thing any of us has ever done," he said. "We're going deep into Vrel space. The environments will try to kill us. The swarm will be everywhere. Intel will be limited. Support will be minimal. Extraction is not guaranteed. Some of us won't come home." He paused and looked at his people. "That said, this is the mission. The galaxy is dying. Billions of people are counting on us. We're the only ones who can do this. So I'm asking for volunteers. Everyone who's willing, step forward." All 600 operators stepped forward without hesitation. Not a single one stayed back. Harper felt pride swell in his chest, but he kept his face neutral. "Good, get your teams together. We deploy in 48 hours. The missions began. Human teams infiltrated Vrel space using stealth ships that could avoid detection. They were inserted on target worlds via drop pods or small shuttles. Then they were on their own. Each team had to locate their target Queen node, get close enough to destroy it, and escape if possible. The missions took weeks or even months. Team 7, led by Lieutenant Chen, landed on a world called Vrel Prime 9. The atmosphere was methane and ammonia, toxic to breathe. The temperature was minus 40 degrees. The landscape was covered in Vrel biostructures, pulsing organic towers that processed biomass. Chen's team wore sealed suits and carried enough supplies for 30 days. They had to find the Queen node somewhere in this nightmare. They moved at night when Vrel activity decreased slightly. They hid during the day in whatever cover they could find. They navigated by landmarks since electronic equipment was unreliable in the interference-heavy environment. After 16 days, they located the Queen node. It was inside a massive biostructure that looked like a mountain of flesh and chitin. Guards surrounded it. Thousands of Vrel warriors specifically designed to protect the Queen. Chen and her team couldn't fight through them. They had to be smart. They spent 3 days observing, learning the patterns. Then they found their opportunity. A supply tunnel led into the structure, used by worker Vrel to bring nutrients to the Queen. The team entered through the tunnel, moving slowly to avoid detection. The inside of the structure was worse than the outside. The walls were alive, pulsing with organic activity. The air was thick with spores. The floor was sticky with biological secretions. They reached the Queen node after 8 hours of crawling through tunnels. It was massive. A bloated creature the size of a building connected to thousands of neural cables that ran throughout the structure. It pulsed with bioluminescent light, and the team could feel its mental presence, a crushing weight on their minds. Chen had to force herself to move forward. They placed their charges, powerful explosives designed to destroy biological targets. They set the timers for 10 minutes and retreated as fast as they could. They were halfway out when the Queen detected them. Alarms sounded, biological alerts that echoed through the structure. Vrel warriors poured into the tunnels. The team fought their way out. Chen lost 2 operators in the tunnel fighting. Sergeant Webb took a Vrel claw through his shoulder but kept moving. They burst out of the structure seconds before the charges detonated. The explosion was catastrophic, destroying the Queen and much of the biostructure. The Vrel in that sector immediately became disorganized, their hive mind connection severed. Chen's team reached their extraction point with 4 survivors out of 6. They were picked up by a stealth shuttle and returned to friendly space. Chen filed her report, buried her dead, and prepared for the next mission. Similar stories played out across Vrel space. Teams succeeded, teams failed, teams died. Some missions went perfectly. Others ended in disaster. Sergeant Rodriguez and her team were overrun on Vrel Prime 12. They transmitted their final report while fighting to their last breath. Captain Morrison's team completed their mission but couldn't extract. They remained behind enemy lines for 3 months, surviving on scavenged supplies and sheer willpower, before finally reaching friendly forces. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Each destroyed Queen node fragmented the swarm. Vrel forces became uncoordinated. They stopped adapting to tactics. They made mistakes. Council forces pushed forward, reclaiming lost territory. The Vrel were dying. After 3 months of operations, 46 Queen nodes had been destroyed. Only one remained, the Prime Queen, the original consciousness that had spawned the swarm. She was located on the swarm core world, protected by millions of Vrel and every defense the hive mind could create. Intel suggested the core world was nearly impenetrable. General Martinez personally briefed the final mission. 60 operators would deploy together, the